First of all, got it. First of all, we would like to say good morning and welcome everybody here on behalf of the Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission and the Institute for Livable Communities. I am so thankful for you all coming today for what we are now embarking on our sixth quarterly Miami Valley Age-Friendly Network meeting. So we're super excited to bring together experts weighing in on future trends and sharing their success stories around this topic of civic participation and employment. So each meeting we cover different topics. In this topic, we're very excited to embark. So before we jump in, I just would like to take a moment to thank our chairperson for this initiative, Becky Benet. Over the past year, she has been leading us forward and will soon be retiring at the end of April as the CEO of Five Rivers Metro. So we wanted to thank her, even though she wasn't able to join us, for her leadership and her commitment to this work. And we're super excited to see what the next chapter will bring. With that being said, I would like to introduce my associate, Donna Kastner, who will be introducing our topics for today. And she'll be helping facilitate some exciting discussions around the topic of civic participation and employment. And she is our awesome moderator for today as well. So she's the jack of all trades. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Serena. And I'm now sharing my screen and starting my slideshow. Can everyone see that? Welcome, everyone. As I mentioned to those of you that were entering early, when we host these types of events, I'm an event planner, and we like to do lobby time where we open the doors sooner, admit people sooner, and then we start the program at 10. For those of you that were waiting to be admitted, my apologies, because we had a couple of other tech challenges that we figured out. And as I mentioned earlier, older adults and employment, the ability to not be master of tech, but to kind of find your way through it is a trait that seems to drive success for folks. So there you have it. Today, we are going to explore the one of the 8 domains of AARP, and it is the civic engagement and employment domain, and one I'm very, very passionate about. In a moment, I'm going to want to know a little bit about you and what drew you to this conference. Really fast, a little bit about me. I'm a wife, a mother. You see those pictures? I now have 3 grandchildren, and they are a lot of my why for the choices I make path forward. I'm a transplanted New Yorker who went to the University of Dayton, go Flyers, and my first official real-world job was as a high school band director at Kaiser High School within Dayton Public Schools. See all those states throughout there? We moved 9 times in 15 years, landed in Cleveland, my wonderful relocating spouse. I had a mid-career pivot to the events industry where I help trade shows and conferences design compelling content. Somewhere along the way, I noticed conferences and trade shows were no longer really talking to me. I was seeing 20 in their 20s, 30 in their 30s. I'm like looking at my fellow boomers going, hey, we're still here. So Retirepreneur hit me, and it's been this side project, passionate ministry that I've been advancing and speaking about. Somewhere along the way, someone said, have you seen what's going on over at the Dayton Foundation and the Fellows Program? And in fact, they have a program that seems to be in line with what you do, and that was Silver is Gold. I happily accepted my first fellowship last year with Silver is Gold, and we'll talk a little bit about what I'm doing path forward. But enough about me. The chat box is the place where we'd like to know about you. So say hello, share as much or as little as you'd like. But I'm curious, what drew you to this conference? You know, are you a person who wants to be engaged in employment or volunteer pursuits? Are you an organization looking to advance this, or a community? As I reviewed the registration list this morning, we had a wonderfully diverse array of participants joining us. So share in the chat box, and while you do so, I'm going to continue. So for some of you, that's not your thing, no worries. If it is, that's the place to connect with others as we go. It's also the place to chime in with questions. We're about to, I would say, buckle up. We're about to share quite a bit of content in a fairly quick pace, but we will pause several times during this meeting for Q&A. As questions come up, feel free to fire them up in the chat box, and I'll be checking with Serena to see what questions are out there. So with that said, my current fellowship is with the Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission, and boy, is this an exciting one. I am learning about things I never knew about. I have largely spent my career in the for-profit sector, some nonprofits, certainly with trade shows and conferences. It's often associations that are hosting those events. So that was my biggest exposure. But now I'm beginning to understand the government elements, the agency elements, and just how things come together. And the more I learn, the more curious I get. In my role with the Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission, you were welcomed by the wonderful, brilliant Serena Anderson, and she is my partner. She has helped onboard me to a program that Lee Semplis and Serena really took from nothing to wonderful success in the first year. And so I guess one of the things I need to be careful, I have to keep it going and build it. So, but they have set the stage for some amazing things. And again, I don't know, I did discover during the pandemic that I'm curious and I'm a conversation catalyst. Those are the superpowers during those quiet moments of the pandemic that I identified. So I think that curiosity is helpful. So I mentioned the 8 domains of livability. In my role with the Dayton Foundation and MVRPC, I am working now with nearly a dozen communities that have officially signed up to advance through AARP's age-friendly livability framework. It is a multi-year process. 9 communities were given grant funding to get them started in the first year. I love these communities. We're meeting monthly, except when there's emergencies. December we had to cancel. But largely these are collaborative sessions where we're together, we're helping to figure out the path ahead, because we're truly pioneering new ground. I think AARP was really thoughtful and solid in this 8 domain framework that they've driven. And each time we gather, we try to take a closer look at one of them. So as I mentioned before, civic engagement and employment over here on the right is the one we're going to be talking about today. I mentioned that we have communities in Miami Valley region across the counties that were provided with grant funding. I want to give you a little bit of context on the AARP Livable Communities program. To date, 800 communities across the United States have enrolled and are advancing to various degrees on this framework. They have set a thoughtful pathway. And in the first year, you're starting to assess needs, doing focus group surveys, et cetera, to really understand where are there gaps that we can address and how might we do that. When you look at this map, all the communities on the left that are in blue were communities that signed on for the program prior to Lee Semplis and Serena Anderson getting out there and promoting this. And suddenly, boom, look at this. Miami Valley's on the map in a huge way. These are the communities that are being supported. And the good news is that we're getting ready to announce another set of grants to grow this community even more. Our hope is that Miami Valley will soon become the hub within Ohio for age friendly. With that said, there are other communities in the state of Ohio and in the country that are doing amazing things. I would say in Ohio, certainly Columbus and Franklin County kind of combined are doing some amazing things. We've talked about that in past meetings, and we will probably dig into that in future meetings, but there's some context. Those of you that joined us at our last quarterly meeting, I had tossed out a number to you, 2,500 hours. Any guesses in the chat box on what 2,500 hours might be? And if you know, you can't say. If you were on our last webinar. Okay, here's the big finale here. 2,500 hours is the gift of time that you get when you retire from a full-time job in a year. You're getting this gift of time. Who wouldn't want that? I think we're operating in an era of time poverty. We're racing to tackle a lot of things. We're over transactioned, as my father used to like to tell me. I think you're a little over transactioned. So time, who wouldn't want that? Yet as I dig deeper, and I'll be honest, I am continuing to research this, but I was curious. So if people 65-ish and older are given this gift of time, what percentage of that age group volunteers in any capacity for outside organizations? And volunteers doesn't count, like I'm helping my kids or babysitting the grandkids. This is really true outside your circle. And I was kind of surprised to see somewhere in the 25 to 30% range, depending on the state. Ohio ranked, I think, in the top 25. And it's very interesting that we have this gift of time, but what I'm sensing is a reluctancy around volunteerism. And I just keep thinking that if we could unleash this crowd in focused ways that are meaningful for them and meaningful for organizations to use their brilliance to help solve, or at least make progress on solving challenging problems, just imagine what our region would look like. Today, there is no shortage of problems that need attention, yet I see an opportunity for us to activate volunteerism a bit more. Let me stop for a moment because we continue to have people joining us. So civic engagement, which I'm kind of connecting to volunteerism, and then employment. These are two buckets, and I'm going to talk about them in separate ways. But first, let's talk about this demographic, this age 60-ish and older population. When I get out there and talk to others in the community about the age-friendly program, sometimes it's like, oh, that's the thing for the older people, right? Like, and we've got, ramps and this and that. And I'm like, yeah, and that is a portion of what this is about. But I think this is my opinion. I'd love for you to chime in the chat box. But I think we've lumped a huge population into a single bucket. And I think there's easily two and maybe more subsets that we need to think about and maybe even speak to differently. I think the phase one folks, and I'm going to be candid, November, I just passed the 65-year line. I mentioned Retirepreneur. I've been doing that for a dozen years, and now, boom, here I am. How'd that happen? But I feel like I'm too young to be done. I have a desire for some more flexibility and to start to scale down some in the commitments I'm making, but I want to stay engaged. I am passionate about things I do, and I want to stay engaged in work that's meaningful, whether it is volunteer or income generating. I am also not in denial that as I look ahead, there will be a point where right now I feel like I can provide support, I can pay it forward, because there may come a day that I'm going to need support. And both of those elements matter in the context of age friendly. But that's my first big idea, to just kind of talk about this. We're not all the same. You cross 65 and it's not all about, the same kind of needs. We're different. And then there's common elements. So that's just a thought on that. There's a book I just started reading, Your One Wild and Precious Life by Dr. Maureen Gaffney. She's in Ireland. She's a behavioral psychologist. And I actually think that she's got she's reframing this whole what we do and what we are. I gave you kind of her whole pathway. And as I mentioned, I'm still reading this, but I love what I'm reading. So first of all, the 100-year life, okay? Once upon a time, Willard Scott would be the Smucker's jelly 100-year-old people, because it was quite a feat. More people are attaining that age, And experts predict in a couple of decades that will start to become a mainstream expectation. For those of you on the call with grandchildren, very high odds that anyone born 2000 or later will live to 100. Isn't that interesting? So if that's the case, holy cow, we're going to stop at 65 and just kind of sit in the rocking chair for 35 years. I mean, I'm exaggerating here, but I think we need to think through life stages, even those before us. And I thought this was a thoughtful way she went through it. Plus, I also liked that I am still middle-aged. So that was, I kind of liked that too. So just a thought, but I think if we start framing this and being a little more intentional in how we address audiences or how we serve them, that might be helpful. All right, so, oops, I went backwards. Don't pay attention. So I want to provide some tips on how to spark civic engagement and employment. And this is going to span both of those buckets, the volunteer bucket and the employment bucket. I mentioned Silver is Gold, which was my fellowship last year. And essentially, Silver is Gold was launched to help connect older adults with businesses and organizations seeking their wisdom and expertise. We spanned both income generating assignments and volunteer assignments. The volunteer matchmaking of sorts that we did happened very easily. The income generating gigs took a while to happen. If you are a community or you're an advocate for this, or you just want to kind of get things going, here's the thing, and I know I'm an event consultant, so I'm going to be looking, events are my hammer, so I look for every nail that matches up. Gather your audience. They want to get together. It blew my mind that as we hosted workshops, as we started at the Dayton Library downtown in that wonderful theater, and we had 50, 60, sometimes 70 people coming and having conversations. And by the way, it wasn't all talking heads. You see me there in the front of the room. We were doing some table talk, and that engagement peer-to-peer matters as well. But I guess the first tip is, if you're looking to serve this audience, host an event. Gather, think about and I am happy to have conversations after this on what those events might look like. But we also had a regular pace. So we were hosting events on the fourth Thursday of every month, same bat channel, same bat time for those of you in my generation. And so that if you were in Florida in January and you're coming back in February, you were like, well, I'll catch on to the next one. But this community not only grew, but they were helping one another. So I just think it's a great listening channel. It's a great group to serve. And this group truly was they were longing for belonging. They had recently retired, and we did target pre-retirees and recent retirees. Don't skip the pre-retirees, because the wheels are already turning on, what's next? So if that's something you're addressing, you might want to be keeping that in mind as well. And then we had workshops. So there's that regular pace. That's what we were doing. We used social channels to get the word out, and we managed to get a good crowd. Our speaker later in this session joined us for one of our workshops, Mike Beavis, and he was amazing. I also kind of just opened up my little tent over at the library in that common area. It's like Lucy and Charlie Brown, and I set up you want to talk? Here I am. And these are the times I'm there, and come talk. And we had some incredible conversations at the library, and it was that one-on-one. And I think it's a great way to test assumptions. We had a strategy and a plan, and we morphed it based on that feedback. We will continue. I think hosting events is a wonderful way to begin to serve this audience. And I do want to tell you, in the name of volunteerism, we will be hosting an event in mid-March at the Dayton Foundation. Thank you, Fitz Center. You've given us access to that wonderful room. So if volunteerism is the thing you came for today, the best point I can give you, or direction I can give you, is to consider joining us at this showcase. And if you want an invitation, you see my contact info. You'll also get links next week. But let me just talk about this whole event piece in Silver is Gold. So I mentioned that volunteerism happened fast, but on the income generating side, Serena, can you give me a time check? Because I don't even see my clock on the screen.
19 after.
Got it. I told you, I got a promise to keep this moving. Silver is gold. It took a little bit longer for us to get the income generating gigs going on. And we're working both sides of the fence. So we go out and we talk to employers and they're like, wow, what a great idea. And then we'd say, well, what work isn't getting done that needs to get done? And they're like, well, we have this and that. Well, let's look and see if we can find a silver is gold candidate. Well, not yet. Well, we're going to wait. And it's kind of that go first, kind of this is new ground. And so it took a little while, but employers did start to respond to this. And as case studies happened, more were interested. There's nothing like some nice press to get the word out about what you're doing. And one of our matches, I want to tell you this wonderful success story we had. So we had a half a dozen matches of candidates to opportunities that were paying. And first of all, the candidates, a lot of times that the employers would say, well, we need them in the office full time. And so first of all, I would say, that's wonderful. That's not our audience. That's not our group. We'll post whatever you have, but we're not likely going to find you someone. What we found for older adults is they wanted some flexibility. They were certainly willing to come into the office. Remember, COVID was at a much higher pitch as this program was being launched. But they wanted the opportunity for some flex time too, because they also wanted that ability to maybe travel, maybe do remote work. I know one of the candidates who I think might be on the line here or watching this webinar. Hello, Phil. You're a great example of someone who working with United Church Homes, you're advancing a project. There's so many hours a week that you're working. You have to be on site sometimes. There's flexibility to travel and continue to advance the project on your laptop. That's the world we're in. The story you see here on the screen is Betsy Westaver. She puts together these focus groups for big companies and collects customer insights. And Paul had actually during COVID chose to retire early. There was some incentive there. He was with GE Synchrony. He was a senior level executive. He came, by the way, to one of our workshops. And following those workshops, there was an awful lot of one-on-one interviewing that I was doing. And as I began to understand his skill set and the leadership piece he had around sales and business development, I hate to say it, but that was an easy placement to make once I understood what he was looking for and then started looking for people who were searching him out. Betsy and I had a conversation and she mentioned that business development was something that they were looking to expand on for her business, but the timing wasn't quite right. Well, wouldn't you know, I run into her at the hub. I'm like, hey, how you doing on that business development thing? She's like, you know what? I'm ready. And the two of these people met. And now Paul, in a part-time capacity, is leading their international business development unit. And he's guiding and advising, and it is a wonderful match. But I think at the end of the day, it did take some, back and forth one-on-one conversations. And I don't know, truly, here I was a fellow working part-time, and this was a full year, and we had 6 successful matches income generating. And I'm not sure how that scales. So something we can continue to learn together. But there are companies out there, and as word gets out, companies will become more flexible on the work that they're putting out there. I want to encourage anyone that is thinking of supporting or advancing civic engagement, volunteerism, and employment. Who will you serve? Who is your end user? I mean, this is the buyer personas that marketing uses, but think about who you're going to serve. And I would caution you to go one step further. Don't try to serve everyone. I mean, you can feed everyone at a basic level, but zero in on a half a dozen categories at most of the types of people that you're going to connect, both on the older adult side, whether it's an employee or a volunteer, and on the organizational side, whether it is a volunteer, it's an association or nonprofit, or it's a for-profit. But once you understand both sides of the fence, things start to come together really wonderfully. So think about that. I am a persona. I'm not everybody, but I am that gigster. In my 50s, I kind of tailed out of the traditional job world and got into consulting. And yes, I would go to like meetings and like, oh, you're consulting, does that mean you're out of work? And it's like, no, I chose it. They asked me to stay. I decided to go here. And there are people like me that do that. But think about, who do you serve? Who's in your community? And every community will look different. There are different demographics. So who can you serve first? In sales, it's the low-hanging fruit. Like, where is that low-hanging fruit that we can begin to create success stories, so we can create a wider net that is going to address more and more people? Because I am not advocating you don't help everyone. I help anyone that calls me or emails me, but my potential to help, is going to be more in sync with who I am and where I can point you. So we looked at that. I also want to encourage you to consider teaming up with chambers of commerce. Think about it. In your traditional world, you might be a member. That might be the place where you're networking. There's a million other groups for those purposes as well. But how might they create a new category of membership for this modern elder? I was at an event that serves the events community, and I started calling it the Legacy League. I'm like, these are people with superpowers that they've honed over a lifetime, and you can point them at a direct need and they can hit it very well. So think about that. One last thought in the means of employment. We are not going to solve this in a single webinar, but hopefully we're making some advances. In my role as a fellow with MVRPC, the communities that received grant funding, this first year of activity in the AARP Age-Friendly Livable Communities program is around gauging, the current state, doing surveys, holding focus groups. I had several, and they're being given funds to help hire people to do these things. And I found from the communities that we might have focus group facilitators in town, but everyone I reached out to was over capacity. And I actually think it is a role that lends itself beautifully to someone in this age bracket that has experience and is not shy in front of a group. It is the number one, I've said I still keep my consulting paddle in the water, albeit in a very part-time capacity. This is the number one request I get to facilitate focus groups, to uncover insights that are going to help the client move faster. I'm going to open my playbook and in a session for just 12 people in person on January 25th. I'm not the only game in town, but I'm just going to show, this is what I do before the focus group. This is what I do during. Here's the report the client gets. And we'll look at some of the nuts and bolts around focus group facilitation. And who knows, a few people might emerge from this session and become the bench of talent that our future age-friendly communities might hire. So with that said, Serena, how are we doing in the chat box?
Got a lot of conversation in here. Lots of folks who are sharing their experiences. Many are lifetime learners and volunteers themselves. I really like the one from Colette. I'm a lifetime learner and volunteer now, exploring how to best support and empower people in my senior age bracket who will want to contribute to co-creating a community of well-being for all of our population sectors. So I really like that comment, Colette. Lots of great conversation going on in the chat box for sure.
Wonderful. Thank you, Serena. And I will say those lifelong learners are the ones that tend to succeed. Everyone can succeed, but they tend to succeed sooner. And I like to talk about, the hundreds of cups of coffees I have in one-on-one conversations, either face-to-face or on Zoom. And when someone says, hey, I want to do something, do you have time? We chat. And the first question I ask is like, tell me about the skills you bring to the table. And I start to go a little further on tech. You don't have to be a techie, but the baseline for just general comfort has risen. And quite frankly, we're all on this Zoom call. That's it, so I'm preaching to the choir right now on that one. And if that's a concern, there are so many ways to shore that up. So again, if you're looking to find a volunteer or income generating opportunity and trying to figure out next steps, contact me and let's see when we can schedule, a call to just talk through some early steps. But technology, get comfortable with it. There are wonderful sessions at the library, but you don't have to be, some major tech wizard, as we just noticed at the beginning of this call when I had to go under the hood and solve something. One last thought on LinkedIn. That has been a great place for me to find gigs. And I have a following there, and decided, I don't know, a couple months ago to create a group on LinkedIn called Age Friendly Dayton, just because I was sharing articles myself, but I wanted to kind of put them in a special place. It's a very early group, but if you want to see articles, I'm trying to hit a regular pace of sharing there. So you might join that group on LinkedIn and just watch. There's no expectations from you, but you'll see updates on things that are happening. And then I don't know if you're podcast people. I love podcasts. That to me is like on-demand learning on the run, because I'm a learning geek. But A Greater Dayton with Dan Edwards is one of my favorites. And it's such a great way to keep abreast of all the wonderful things happening in Dayton, and the people he interviews are wonderful. And somehow I'm going to be one of those wonderful people in mid-February. So stay tuned, because that episode will focus on age-friendly initiatives in our region. And then finally, and I'm saving the biggest for last, I am so thrilled to be working with MVRPC, and specifically on the Miami Valley Age Friendly Network. It is part of a larger initiative within the Institute for Livable and Equitable Communities. And these people make me smarter. I'm a work in progress, and I'm still running with my puppy legs on some of these topics, but they really have helped raise my game in understanding a fairly complex set of problems. And with that said, I think we want to bring our next speaker on board, Mike Beavis. Mike is a wealth of insight, a generous mentor. You're going to hear about his Panarians, if you haven't already, where he's been doing a lot of one-on-one volunteer pursuits, but his career is amazing. Sales and leadership roles, Huffy, Avery Dennison, I mean, the list goes on. Now he's senior partner at Strategic Sales and Marketing Partners, and we are thrilled to have him. How do I unshare? Here it is. I'm going to stop sharing so he can start sharing. We're thrilled to have him sharing his insights with us today. Take it away, Mike.
All right, Donna, thank you very much. See if I can bring this up here from the beginning. Over here. There we go. Okay. Well, Donna, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And thanks for the kind words. It's always a pleasure to join you and to share some ideas with, I think, a few of the people on here who I know. And if you haven't met me before, I'll tell you just a little bit about me. But I thought I would talk about today retiring. And I said, well, retiring, well, not so fast. So I thought it might be a good topic to talk about today. Just real briefly on me, I'm kind of the opposite of Donna in that I grew up in Cincinnati and then moved to Dayton, attended Miami University, spent about 3 years in the Navy, and then spent 24 years with Huffy, the bicycle company. And I spent about 10 years in Dayton with them, about 2 in Milwaukee, and then 4 in Seattle, and came back here. And then moved into the barcode industry for a couple of years, and then into the electronic data business for about 5 years, and started a company now 18 years ago called Strategic Sales and Marketing Partners. And I call myself a timeshare exec, and I help small and medium-sized companies run their business when they're too busy running their business. Officially, I'm kind of a consultant on speed. Let's just talk a little bit about retirement. When Donna asked me to talk, I thought I would put up here, well, retirement has changed. It's much different than my parents. I think my dad retired when he was 62 or 63 years old. And back in the 70s and 80s, people were retiring in their 60s. And today, things have changed dramatically. And so my first question to you today is, are you changing your thinking as far as retirement? The first thing is you're living longer. Donna already talked about this earlier today, but today people are living 5, 10, 15, 20 years longer than they did 50 years ago. And so, as I said, retirement may last decades. I know my parents relied upon pensions a lot, but pensions are basically gone. You're relying now on maybe on your CDs or bonds or IRAs or whatever might be there. And back when my parents retired, $1 million was a lot of money. Today with inflation, who knows how far that will get you. And then taxes become a challenge. How do you avoid taxes? How do you invest differently today? And then the next thing I did a lot of review on, talked about grandparents have become the ATMs today. They are funding their grandchildren's college. They are maybe helping their children with a new house. Maybe they've helped them get a new car. Maybe they've even purchased a vacation home today. So grandparents have become the new ATM. And then again, who knows where healthcare costs are going today. So it's all part of what I talk a little bit about in a second. We're going to talk about your life plan. So I'm not going to ask you to come back and report back, but how are your savings and your investments today? And how deep are you in debt? Is your home paid off? And how about the proper healthcare insurance? Yeah, I know we all have, those of us over 65 have our Medicare, but how much are the additional plans costing you? They continue to increase. And then again, are you supporting someone? Many of us boomers today are supporting our parents. Isn't it interesting when the children become the parents in this situation? And how's your health? Are you spending more time working out now that you're into your 60s or into your 70s? And maybe you've retired because you are tired of work. But all in all, have you sat down and actually done a life plan? What's your plans going to be? So a lot of people who have retired have become bored to tears. I mean, how many hours of television can you watch? Do you get tired of watching Fox or CNN or CNBC, whatever your choice is? Have you determined that you want to travel more? That maybe you want to spend more time with friends? In earlier years, people would sell their house and take the money and move to Florida. That might not be the case anymore. And I think I saw in one of the chat boxes is that some of the people here are now giving back to society. They're volunteering. Maybe they're volunteering for certain organizations. Maybe they're on certain boards. You talked before, Donna, about Betsy and Paul being involved there. And I know both Betsy has been a great mentor and a great coach. In fact, she's been in one volunteer organization with me. So you have a lot of experience in this area that you can do. And then that's why I call myself a time-shared exec. I'm able to work selectively and the hours I want to. Okay. Okay. So after retirement, many people are choosing to return to the workplace, even if it's a job that's different from their previous career. It expands your mind a little bit. But working as a retiree can allow you to pursue jobs you might be interested in outside of your former career. And jobs for retirees can be flexible, help you design a schedule that fits your retirement plan. I know people today who have gone back to work part-time. They've named the hours they want to work, the days they want to work. If they want to take a week off to go to Florida or Arizona or 2 weeks, they can do that. So today is totally different from what retirement looked like years ago. So what business did today need us? What business does today need our help? The first area is healthcare. Boomers need more and more healthcare, and the hospitals today are begging for help. Whether they're not just looking for nurses and for doctors, but they need people who can welcome people in, who can offer assistance. Retirement communities are the same way. Maybe you would be a greeter, and also potentially you could just be there to volunteer. People like when you walk up and down the halls and talk to people. Many times their families don't even visit them. But the retirement communities are expanding, as we've seen that in this area. They have a need for part-time work and also for volunteers. And the education side of the business is exactly the same. You don't have to have a teacher's degree to go back and help with teaching. There are a lot of opportunities out there. I've seen many schools just begging for help to come in and help in the education side. The professional services is a major area. Things that our parents never use, but we use today. There are a lot of those services that can be provided online, but you look at the different services that are there. I mean, how many people who are retired don't cut their own lawn, but they have someone cut their lawn? They maybe use another company to come out and treat their lawn. All of the cable television and the things like that, those companies all need help, and a lot of work is done remotely. Hospitality and leisure. I've talked to people who are now working part-times at hotels. They are working at a counter and they are greeters. There's a lot of opportunities in that area. I've talked to people who have done some part-time work on cruise ships. So they greet people when they come on, and so you get a free cruise on that too. So there are some fun things that you can do. You can do volunteer, you can do it for money. I don't have to talk about Amazon and the whole wholesale and distribution area, but I have a couple good friends that they have been between jobs and they worked for Amazon. They've worked some different hours and they don't work a full 40-hour week, but the whole wholesale and distribution, specifically in the Dayton area, around the Dayton airport, has grown tremendously. The financial services. I know people who work for the different financial services, and they're looking for people to come in and help. Whether you want to be a financial planner, you want to help and be certified in that area, or you just want to talk to people. So there's a real need there. And I don't have to tell you about retail. Today, there's such a high demand at retail. They've cut back hours. The same thing in the food industry. Such a demand there. And then nonprofit organizations. There are many opportunities for part-time jobs and also volunteer jobs with nonprofits. So what have we talked about so far? The first thing is the unemployment rates are still stay very low. Yes, there's been some cutbacks in some of the tech industries, but I think they were overstaffed as they were. You know, we can talk about Amazon with cutbacks. We could talk about Twitter with cutbacks in that area. But in the basic areas that I've just talked about, there are still needs there, and there are still very low unemployment rates. There are favorable market conditions today. As boomers, we are spending more money than any other group before us. We're more active than any other age group before that. So those conditions are good, and companies are still begging for help. Some of the companies that I work with cannot find people. They've run ads, and maybe they get maybe they'll get 3 resumes in, and none of them are qualified. So there's a tremendous need there. And even if you only want to work a couple of days a week, or you want to work part-time, I'm not recommending that you go out and drive a bus for RTA for Dayton. But today they are just begging for help. And not of them are all the big buses. Some of them are the smaller buses. And you may be able to name your own price and hours that you can do there. So I think that's the takeaway so far. There are a tremendous amount of opportunities. I pulled this comment out when Don and I worked on the silver and gold presentation about a year ago. But Vicki Winters in New York says, it keeps me in contact with people. I'm loved and I'm nurtured. I see people who have retired and just stay at home. But I say, get out there and reinvent yourself to suit your situation. You can technically you can honestly name what you want to do. I thought that was a good comment, and I've used that quite a bit. So who can help? So the first thing I did when Don and I talked about talking today, I went back and said, tell me what jobs are out there for retirement people. The first thing that popped up was this website, myjobscorner.com. And I found thousands of jobs that were there. And the same thing with jobs.bear.com. I spent some time in the past couple of days looking at Indeed. And if you go in and say, tell me about jobs for retirees, tell me about jobs for people in their 60s or people in their 70s. And Indeed came up and said, here are 106 best jobs for retirees. And it was a list so long that I didn't even print it, but I just went back over it. I've gone to workforce50.com quite a bit and primecb.com quite a bit, and that's helped. Let's talk a little bit about AARP and Kelly Services and Manpower. And let's start with Manpower. Manpower is just not placing people to work in factories. They're looking for additional people to help in all different types of services. And Kelly Services are the same way. So they've changed dramatically. In past years, they helped major companies find people to work in blue collar type jobs, and that's not the case anymore. And that's why the next two things the government has picked up on, the SCSEP, the Senior Community Service Employment Program, is huge. If you go to that website, you can find all kind of jobs, all kind of part-time jobs for seniors. And the same thing with the WIP program, the Workforce Investment Projects. So there are all type of projects. So if you want to go to work and just work part-time, you can look at any of these, and I can guarantee that within a very short period of time, you'll be back to work. When I went on to myjobscorner.com and just started searching through that, they came back to me over the past 3 days and said, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go to work? How soon can you go to work? And so they'll come right back at you. So there are a tremendous amount of opportunities out there. So let's talk a little bit about some other help. Back in 2008, we started a group called the Panarians, and we called it the Panarians because we met at Panera in Centerville. And it was basically a job-seeking self-help direction type group. And we met at Panera until we got so big when the recession was on in 8, 9, and 10 that we had to move to a restaurant. And the restaurant owner would give us a key and let us come into the restaurant first thing in the morning, 7 o'clock. He'd let us use their coffee mugs and their coffee. We just had to put the coffee mugs in the dishwasher when we left and put the key under the mat. But we brought in all type of speakers. Well, as the economy got better, we didn't have 100 people left anymore, and so we moved back to Panera, first back at the Dayton Mall, and then they closed that, and then we moved to the one in Centerville, and that one's been closed. And then during COVID, we decided it would be easier to Zoom. So we meet every other Monday on Zoom from 7 to 8 o'clock in the morning. That enables people to Zoom in from not just Dayton, but Cincinnati and Columbus. And we have people from all over the US who come in. Right now, we're having about 20, 25 people. We always have a topic that we go over. Next week, I think we're into the 12 toughest questions that an employer may ask you. We have talked about the 12 words you don't want to have in your resume. And so we have people there who are HR specialists, but I set it up. We started about 10 till 7, so we have a little bit of time to talk, but we meet again this coming Monday. And the topic we'll have is, as I said, the 12 toughest questions that you'll be asked during an interview. So I think if you're interested in getting on there and you just don't have to be a job seeker, we talk about all kinds of different things. Also, we started about 15 years ago a group called the Sunrise Alliance, and that's a group of consultants, and we meet monthly. Actually, we meet the first Thursday of every month at Flyboys in Oakwood. And I say there are consultants and wannabes, and we talk about what's going on in the industry, what jobs are out there, who needs help, and it's quite interesting. We have our own website. Actually, you can Google Panarians, and you can also Google the Sunrise Alliance, and you can see who's involved in that. But it's a different discussion. We do not talk politics. That's one of our rules. But we talk about the economy. We talk about what's happening next, and we welcome. We're probably up to about 12 people. We meet from 5 to 6 o'clock at night, so it's probably one beer or one glass of wine. And it's a very vibrant group, and I think most of the people on this call would enjoy it. And if you want to, you can create your own group. I mean, we created these out of nowhere. So if you'd like to, you can create your own group. Just determine what you want to talk about. Then get a group together. You can do that. And that's what we've done here. So we were.
I think, is anyone else seeing frozen screen here? This is the reality of Zoom. So here we go. We're going it together. We're in this together. To make sure everyone's aware, you're going to get a link to a recording of this session plus the slides, but it may be early next week. We want to have one email that's all encompassing. If you need something sooner, let me know. Reach out to me via email. Mike talked about a number of different things. He is a wonderful advisor. He has been a wonderful advisor for me and so gracious in sharing his insights, and his Panarians group is just amazing. So as we wait, Mike out there, I think you're going to be jumping out and jumping back in. Any questions? Serena, what are we seeing in the chat box?
Lots of discussion about individual experiences, but one of the questions that Deborah Wilcox just shared was talking about mindfulness, mental, physical, spiritual, physical, emotional, financial, family life, and more. Talking about health and mental health in particular. And the question she had that's a reflection is, how do we engage in daily self-care? So we're talking about more than just what do we do after retirement? It's how do we take care of ourselves after retirement as well.
And it's I just love, Deborah, thank you for raising those crucial issues. In my world, I know that as we age, there's a number of things that are tugging at us. In fact, you saw me mute because you don't know this, but I'm going to be fully transparent. We had to, at the last minute, watch our granddaughter. So my husband is downstairs and suddenly they were having too much fun and I had to hit the mute button. And that's the life we live in, demands come, we try to blend them. And I will tell you one more thing, staying engaged in work you enjoy is the #1 longevity trigger. At a recent doctor's appointment, I was like, should I be taking stuff like, Prevagen or something, in a proactive stance to make sure I'm staying clear? And my doctor said, you know what you're doing right now, you love what you do. And that's the #1 thing you could be doing. Yeah, you should probably cut down the sweets and a few other things and maybe take a few more laps around your neighborhood. But I think staying engaged in work you do and in a hopeful standpoint. But today's world is like, and when you're isolated, and if you got news channel coming at you left and right, and it's very easy. My mom, God bless her, she's 88. She's just outside of New York City. We talk almost daily. And sometimes I'm like, Mom, turn off CNN. I'm going to tell you some hopeful stories of wonderful things that are happening that maybe you might not have heard about. There's some really good people out there doing amazing things. So Mike is rejoining us. I'm admitting him. There you have it. So keep sharing in the chat box. This is not meant to solve it. I know we're hitting you with a lot of information. My hope is that we're going to get in small groups in future events to really take a deeper dive on things that matter for you. I think this is kind of a showcase of how might we tackle this domain, and hopefully we're teeing up enough ideas that there's a few things you might explore further. With that said, Mike, you're going to be joining us, and we may have to go straight. I do not want you to hold your questions for the end. Are there questions for Mike? Because we're going to need to move ahead with our program. And I think he's joining us. We just admitted him. Gotta love technology. Never let him see you sweat.
It looks like Deborah wants to know when do you meet at Flyboys? I think you were sharing that, and then we lost you. So I think
Mike,
we're all
are
wanting
you
to
on
know when
there?
you meet.
Do we have one more admit? So when we moved from Cleveland to Cincinnati and looked at places to live, I'm like, I just need screaming internet after that. I don't care. That's the world we're in, right? And it's not always possible. And it's a very, it's becoming like oxygen. We need to think about that as communities. In fact, that's a huge initiative within the scope of age friendly, is access, is infrastructure, it's literacy. And I'm thrilled to be involved in some conversations around that, courtesy of the Dayton Foundation. Mike, do we have you on board? And Lee, I'm going to say you're on deck. We're going to be going to you next. The big question right now, when do the Fly Boys meet? And I think, Serena, if you can back channel with Mike on the chat box, and I'm going to move forward. So you've got employment covered with Mike. I talked a little bit about both and some trends in the area. I do think volunteerism, we are touching it, but probably more so in the future. But what I love about the program that I'm in as a fellow, I'm a fellow. I mean, I call my mom, your daughter's a fellow. It's this mixture, it is, yes, it's less than I make as a consultant. It's a steady gig. It's a commitment back and forth, and it's aligned with something that I care deeply about that candidly I wasn't getting paid for at all. So it allows me to get engaged in conversations and help move them forward and be that person. Lee did such an amazing job launching this program, and she's an attorney. I know the first thing I did, I'm like, okay, if you got any contracts, I am not the person that's going to look at them, but if you want to host an event, I might be that person. And with that said, I want to introduce my boss and friend, Lee Semplis, the senior fellow at the Dayton Foundation. And Lee, do you have the ability to share your screen?
I think I do. I thought I was sharing.
The green button in the middle?
We can see. I don't know if you can't see on your end, Donna.
All right, keep going. I got the problem here.
Thank you, Donna. So this story begins with Don Ambrose. Don is the president of Del Mar Healthcare, which is a California-based foundation. It was created after they sold a series of skilled nursing centers across the country, also facilities that were located in Dayton, Ohio. About 12 years ago, Don came to the Dayton Foundation looking for ways to support older adults in the Dayton, Miami Valley region. And he was well aware of what the changing demographics are within the United States as we look at each day, 10,000 adults turn the age 65. So he was watching this aging population and has this passion for pursuing age-friendly initiatives. So the pilot was started So the fellows, I think there's a recording. Is everyone getting that message? Okay, I'll keep going. The fellows work on community issues, and they work with organizations that simply do not have the bandwidth to work on a special project, or they need a special skill set. They are paid a stipend of $25,000 a year, and they also receive a budget of $10,000. The budget is from our operating budget, which allows the fellows to attend conferences that are related to the project they're working on, if they need to build marketing materials, if they need to support in any way what the initiative is that the nonprofit is seeking to accomplish. This is a listing of some of the host organizations, and you can see where the fellows use their experience in a variety of what I would call actually domains that we're looking at with the age friendly in terms of education, housing, literacy, equity and racism, and also combating ageism. So for example, on the area on aging, we had a fellow placed there for 3 years. And what the fellow did was she began to assess and build a report of the current needs of in-home healthcare aides within the Miami Valley region, which clearly there is a shortage of. Another fellow has been working with Preschool Promise to help early childhood teachers further their education and receive critical credentials that they need to work with children from the ages of 1 to 5. And we also had a filmmaker join as a fellow, and he worked with the Ruth Frost Center. And what he did was create a series of podcasts on the art of aging, which were very well received by the community.
Lee, I'm going to break in. I think we're not seeing slides advancing. Are you in the presentation mode?
I think I am. Let me check here.
A few people commented in the chat box. We'll just keep going because this is just wonderful info. And yes, once again, all slides from all presenters will be sent out post-meeting.
Okay. Let me try to fix that if I can, but
You might need to share screen on to the page where your presentation's showing.
okay. Are you seeing the fellows here? No. Okay. I apologize.
Okay.
I'll keep going. Who are the Del Mar Fellows? The fellows are retired adults, typically age 55 and up. They have more than 40 years experience, but more importantly, they're committed to working on change and community issues. They are highly educated. We have PhDs, JDs, masters. They range from professions in the private sector as well as the nonprofit sector. We have nonprofit executive directors, hospital and health professionals. We even had an aviation engineer as one of our former fellows. So unfortunately, you cannot see my chart, but I put in a chart here just to talk about what are the ways to prepare yourselves. Maybe you can see this. Can everyone see this chart? Okay, great. This is ways to help you identify what your encore career might look like. Whether you want to go into a business encore career like the Silver to Gold program, or you want to start your own business, or you're thinking about volunteering. Donna has talked about your superpowers. So one of the ways you want to start to plan your encore career and your life is to think about what are those skills that you bring to the table. Are they problem-solving skills? Are you have expertise in research and writing? Then you want to look at the types of environments you might want to participate in. Do you want to work from your home office? Would you rather go into an office? Are you interested in working in parks and recreation? So really look at the environments that are out there in terms of applying your volunteer expertise. And of course, it goes without saying, you should always follow your passion and then apply for positions that certainly appeal to you. This chart shows the return on investment for the Del Mar Encore Fellows. The fellows have worked since 2017 for more than 30,000 hours that they've given back to the Dayton community. And we look at our investment, not only with Don's initial investment, also the Dayton Foundation through its grants committee has invested in the Del Mar Encore Fellows Initiative. And we look at what we're giving back to the community in terms of greater than $2 million. What we did this past summer is take an approach where we really studied what has been the impact for the past 5 years of the Del Mar Encore Fellows Initiative. And we hired an organization called Measurement Resources out of Columbus, and they did a comprehensive evaluation. And when they looked back at all the host organizations, and I think I can probably show you those now, when they looked back at all the value that the host organizations received in terms of having a fellow on board, what it equated to was either hiring a $155,000 consultant for the position for 1 year that they would have had to pay in hiring outside expertise. What they decided in terms of the value for every dollar, what the host organization received back was $1.31. So in terms of the impact it is having, both in terms of giving back to the community in the Dayton region, as well as the financial value and the sustainability of the model, we see that is right on target for what Don's vision was over 12 years ago now. So I would like to just leave you all with a quote, and let's see if anyone can guess who this is from. There is a fountain of youth, excuse me. It is your mind, your talents, the creativity you bring to your life and the lives of people you love. Anyone guess who said that? Serena, can you check the chat?
Checking now. Nothing yet.
All right, here's a clue. It's a famous Italian actress.
We did have one guess at MLK, but I think we know that that's not true.
Sophia Loren. I thought it was a great quote.
Mhm.
So any questions anyone has for me, I'll take those at this time. You can reach me at the Dayton Foundation. And my contact information, it will be in the slides that will follow after Donna and Serena publish the notes and the minutes of the meeting. Thank you.
Donna, you're mute.
Can you hit, Lee, can you hit the red button of stop sharing, please, so we can get
Yes.
back on the screen? Thank you, everyone. Lee, thanks for filling us in on a remarkable program that I'm privileged to be a part of. And we, in the interest of time, we want questions from you. So raise your hand in the chat box. Just put a question mark in there and we'll call on you if you want to ask directly. In the meantime, Mike Beavis, you have rejoined our digital universe and we wanted to do a quick wrap up, and I'm going to emphasize quick with you. I think folks want to know where to find this, the Flyboys. There was questions all over regarding some of the things you talked about. And I think, are you pulling up the slide? You're muted, so please unmute. And as that happens, just remember we are a pointer channel and this stuff happens all the time. So if there's questions that came up and you can't, there we go. Mike, you're still on mute. So now let's hear you. All
right, I'm
There
back.
you are.
All
He's
right,
back.
so thanks. I apologize for that. They are replacing a lot of the old wooden telephone poles in our area. There's these big, huge metal things, and occasionally we lose that. So I'll finish up here quickly. And I think with the last speaker that was on, talked about following your passion, and I think that's the key point I'm going to make here. So is it better to give back? If you don't want to go to work, then it's definitely better to give back. 31% of the boomers volunteer today. There are many service clubs that are still with me.
We are.
Okay, great. I thought I lost you. Okay, service clubs that need a lot of help. I'm a member of an Optimist Club in Centerville. We're the largest Optimist Club in the world. About 300 members, and we donate more than $100,000 back into youth programs every year. But there's a real need for any of these service clubs that are out there. There are 20 Optimist Clubs in the greater Dayton, Cincinnati area. But your church needs help, synagogues, temples, they all need help. Volunteer at the food bank. Even if you can give a couple hours, I've volunteered at Crayons the Classroom. They need help. Ronald McDonald House. I have helped cook dinners at Ronald McDonald House, and just for a couple hours, you can help out. So there are numerous nonprofits that need help. The Boy Scouts, the Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and you can link your experience and your passion with these many that need help. So finishing up here, if you want to search any other nonprofits that need help, you can go to any of these here. I talked before about Prime CB is a good one. We talked about AARP. So there's a lot of good ones that you can find there. And so you may not have expected to work or volunteer in your golden years, but there are many part-time gigs for seniors that can help you keep active, maybe more financially comfortable and more socially engaged. So that's the key points I was trying to make. But there are so many opportunities out there and such a great need that you can almost do anything that you want to. So I appreciate the time to speak today. Thank you. Sorry we got cut off, and it took me a little while to get back in. But any Q&A that we have, whatever time we have done, it's up to you.
Yeah, and for whatever reason, Serena, there must be gremlins in this tech channel all over the place, but my chat box is not advancing. Any questions coming up from our participants?
We had a question, Mike, earlier of where do you meet meet at Flyboys? Or when? I'm sorry, not where.
Okay, it's Flyboys in Oakwood. It's right in the center of Oakwood, and we meet the first Thursday of every month from 5 to 6.
And then we had one other question. You mentioned that you had a group that met on Zoom, and Melody would like to know, how do you get that info on that Zoom link?
Okay, we meet next Monday. We meet every other Monday morning from 7 to 8. And if you, I did put my email address in the chat box, but if she's still on, my email address is Mike@Strategic Sales MP, Mike@Strategic Sales with an S, M, such as marketing, P as in partners.com. Just send me an email. I'll make sure that you get in on the Zoom next Monday. It's a good group, and the hour passes by very quickly, but we start at 7 and end right at 8. So I think you'll find it interesting. You get a chance to introduce yourself and then chirp in on the discussion.
Mike,
Thank you so much.
thank you so much for joining us. Mike is he's a knowledgeable yet so ultra gracious person in our community. I still remembering, Mike, it's about a year ago that you took me to Aileron. I was like a kid in a candy shop walking around that place going, oh my gosh, we got to do a workshop here.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Everyone, we're going to be sending contact info and some of the post-meeting materials, but I want to do one more thing before we convene. And part of it is unpacking the gems you heard. Time and technology is, sometimes a challenge for us, but I would like to send you to breakouts for just a short period of time. We're looking, it's 11:13. We're going to bounce you in, and it's like shaking the boggle cube. Okay. So they're randomly assigned. We didn't decide who's in what room. We're letting Zoom figure that out. And in a moment, I'm going to open all the rooms, and you'll get a chance to meet 2 or 3 other people that are on this call. My advice to you is be really fast in introducing yourself and share one thing that we talked about today that resonated. And if you don't have one thing that resonated, what didn't we talk about that we should have? I'm going to say that the person with the birthday that's next after today's date is going to be your chat box reporter. They'll jot down a few notes, because when we come back as a large group, we would really appreciate it if you shared a few takeaways in the chat box. So with that said, I am opening all rooms and go. If you're in the large group room, we can have our own little breakout here. Feel free to unmute, turn your camera on or not, totally up to you. But we're going to spend about 10 minutes with the breakouts, and then we're going to bring everybody back. I just sitting there going, you kicked me out already. What are you doing? I got a couple calls from people that did not get into the breakout room. Sometimes if your internet connection is not steady, that'll happen. Is everybody on the screen? Did most of you jump into a breakout room that you went, please don't take me out of here. I'm having some really good conversations. Well,
Yeah.
I'm gonna say unmute. And let's just do this in a big, wide way on takeaways, if we could. We covered a lot of territory today. There's a reason you came, and all of you have come with different thoughts in mind. Any takeaways anyone wants to jump in and voice in the large group?
There's a large untapped resource out in the world.
Margie, you got that right, and I could not agree with you more. Rap, I saw your hand go up.
It's just that I think we realize that at any age in the Miami Valley, there's something that we can do and think we can contribute to our region.
Amen to that. I will say, and I think Lee touched on this, he who does too much does too little. Like, be careful not to really examine, do some self-reflection on where are my superpowers? What are the things I just can't not do because I love them, and focus there. Other thoughts? Raise your hand. Rich.
Yeah, I think something that I'm hearing from a lot of employers, as well as nonprofits and so on, is the new changing attitude towards work. Quiet quitting, slacking off, not having reasonable professional goals. What the hell's going on with all these people? You know, I think people at our age can bring that work ethic back into it and can set really good examples, not dictating to other people, just by watching how we might work or volunteer at a place responsibly and dedicated.
Good points, Rich. I'm going to counter you that I'm part of a group that's CoGenerate, that this is actually part of the Encore network, and they're bringing generations together. And sometimes other generations are looking at us going, wait, that's my job. What are you doing here? And they're like, when are you going? When are you going to leave? I've been looking at your job. And I'm out there having conversations going, I get it, but we need to kind of give and share. And I think how it's introduced makes a world of difference. Deborah.
Yes, in our group, we talked about how this is an exciting time for creating organization and community wellness, and how we can learn from one another and collaborate and support one another, our efforts, our collective efforts and our individual efforts. So a very exciting time with lots of opportunities for growth.
Awesome. That is so encouraging. I mean, because I think sometimes, again, it's daunting and there's opportunity, but we're going to need to roll up our sleeves and work together to try to find those and connect those people to the opportunities. I think personally, it comes down to connection. It's our relationships. You might meet someone on this call. My hope is that we can convene some face-to-face sessions like this where the community comes together. Oh, wow, you're looking to do that? Let me introduce you to this person. For all the silver is gold effort, and I was running hard, more connections happened peer-to-peer for the people that came in the room. You know, I was wanting to help connect them, but there was only so much we could do, and it's just gather them, let them talk to one another and get to know one another. And point each other to opportunities. I think it's a hopeful horizon, but not without some re-engineering. Other thoughts on takeaways from today in the chat groups?
So for me, how are you?
I don't know, can everyone hear?
Yes, we
Can I
can.
come back in 10 minutes?
Great. For me, I
Right.
landed
Thank
in
you.
like the best group. I think, not being biased, but the gentlemen were so helpful. And I've got some emails. I'm excited about that. Working in the field of developmental disabilities, you know, what we call it in our world is person-centered planning. So that's, I'm taking away all of that because it's so true. It should be so personalized. We all have a different plan and we need to find those opportunities and connect people with that. So I'm thrilled with this. And success looks different for everybody. Work looks different for everybody. What you bring to the table is going to look different, and that's okay. So I'm excited, and I'm definitely going to be reaching out. So I hope when they offer their emails, they meant it.
Awesome. Chandra, thank you for that. Others, takeaways from these small group chats?
I still have a lot of work to do on advocating for accessibility. Because the big issue for anybody joining is that when you send out the invitations, there's no mention of how to request accessibility, what accessibility is already built in. As you know, when I came on, we had to deal with it. I'm advocating that it be pre-done and pre-sent out so individuals have less access in getting the accessibility they need to join any group, whether it's live or on Zoom.
Melody, thank you so much for pointing that out, and also for your patience. Those that, if you were with us early, I had to scramble to figure out how to turn on closed captions on Zoom, something I hadn't done before. And I think our awareness is just going to be continually growing. We need to help each other understand that. The richest takeaway I have from my fellowship with the Dayton Foundation is I am seeing things I've never seen before. I'm aware of things that maybe I wasn't paying attention to. So I'm not trying to, I'm actually a nice person, but once you're aware of something, you can't stop seeing it. And I just, this fellowship is just opening my lens in remarkable ways. Melody, thank you so much for voicing that. Other thoughts?
I live in Harrison Township, which is North Dayton, and it's largely a senior community. A lot of single women who live in this community, and it's like, to me, it's identifying the needs of the community where they can serve, and then determining how to reach them to make them
Great
aware.
point, Georgianne. You know, and there's a variety of needs, a variety of opportunities to contribute. And I'm becoming more aware of that. You know, I know as we were preparing for that volunteer showcase, I mean, sometimes it's just several people doing thank you calls that, you know, I love doing that. Other people might say, that is not what I'm going to do. But if you've got a bunch of data that needs to be crunched, I'll be all over that. So it's really understanding the gifts and making those matches. Thank you. Other thoughts? I got two new connections on LinkedIn while you guys were in breakouts. Look at that. And I hope you connect with one another, but just a reminder, I am continually I'm trying to find some central place to share things. And right now I'm seeing articles all the time that are helpful, and I'm not plastering them constantly, but I'm trying to hit an almost daily pace. On LinkedIn, there is an age-friendly Dayton group that I just formed. It's anyone. You can post things there, but I would encourage you to come join us there. I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn, just because we can have some conversations offline. And we will be reaching out. Bear with me today, because as I mentioned, I have to change hats after the Zoom call and be Nona, because my husband is single-handedly babysitting a 2-year-old, and I think he needs me. But you'll get something hopefully tomorrow, if not Monday, with slides, the recording link, resources, contact information. This is the start of more conversations, and we'd love for you to be a part of them and give us feedback. Would you like? What didn't you like? So watch for that email. You'll see all that whole mix of things in an email. And with that, I want to thank our speakers today. Mike, Lee, wonderful insights. Thank you so much for taking time to share.
Thanks, Don. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
And our participants, together we're better. So let's just keep forging ahead and sharing insights and having these conversations. It starts with one and it continues to grow. Thank you so much for participating today.